welcome back to StatLab. Today we're going to start looking at hypothesis tests, and specifically we're going to look at hypothesis tests for proportions. And the purpose of a hypothesis test is to test a claim using sample data. A hypothesis test is made up of the null hypothesis, and this would mean that the result that we're looking into is actually true, and then we would have the alternative hypothesis, which is what we are testing, what we're looking to find out. A hypothesis is usually going to be, HO is always going to be that P equals some number, a proportion, and our alternative hypothesis is going to be that P is greater than, less than, or not equal to the same number. So HO is always equal to, and HA is some form of not equals to, depending on what question you're asking. Now, another important thing is that you always have to define your parameter. You can't just say P and then not say what it is. So you would have to say for the population of all, whatever you're talking about, let P be the proportion that blah, blah, blah. So today we are going to investigate another favorite Canadian snack, ketchup chips. So a Canadian company says that 70% of Canadians like ketchup chips. So Sasha decides that she wants to test this claim. She's going to randomly select 200 Canadian adults, and in that sample she finds that 122 say yes, they enjoy ketchup chips. So before we can do our analysis, let's just make sure that our assumptions and conditions are met. We will start with our independence assumption. This condition is met because she randomly selected the sample from the population of all Canadian adults. And as I've mentioned before, this word all is very important, the population of all Canadian adults. If we look at our success/failure condition, we know that our successes would be 200 times 0.70, which would give us 140, and our failures would be 200 times 0.30, which would give us 60. So this condition is met because both the successes and the failures are greater than 10. So next, let's look at how we would calculate our sample proportion. Well, we would use our equation here, and we would take our number of successes and divide it by the sample size, and we would find that we have 0.61. So Sasha wants to find out if less than 70% of Canadian adults like ketchup chips. So state the hypothesis and define the parameter. So just as a reminder, our P hat is 0.61, and our P naught is 0.70. And the reason why it has that little naught there is just because this is a estimated population proportion. It's not a known one. It is simply a claim that we are testing. So our hypothesis, HO, is going to be that P equals 0.70, and our HA is going to be that P is less than 0.70. And if we define our parameter, we're going to say, for the population of all Canadian adults, let P be the proportion that like ketchup chips. Next, we're going to want to calculate our test statistic. And for that, we're going to use this formula here. And again, the reason why that says P naught instead of just P is because this is an estimated population proportion, but you can treat it the same as P. If we fill in our values, we are going to calculate a test statistic of negative 2.78. Now, if we bring up our Z table and we go to the row of minus 2.7 and the column of 0.8, we are going to find a p-value of 0.0027. Okay, so now that we have our p-value, let's go ahead and interpret that p-value. This is one of those very sort of specific answers that they want very specific things stated in, so let's go through exactly how this should sound. If the population proportion of Canadian adults that like ketchup chips really is 0.70 and the test assumptions hold, there is a 0.0027 probability of taking a random sample of 200 Canadian adults and finding 122 or less like ketchup chips. So we're basically saying that there is a 0.27% probability of that happening. So now let's look at our actual test. Is there evidence that the company's claim is wrong and the proportion of Canadian adults that like ketchup chips is less than 70%? Now, we've already done our calculations. We have our p-value. So what can we do with that p-value? Well, we have some tables here that help us figure out what to do with that p-value. And it depends on whether or not we were given significance level in the question. So if we were given significance, we're going to use this table here. And if your P is less than the significance level, you reject HO and conclude HA. If it's greater than, you do not reject HO or conclude HA. And if it's not given, then you cannot assess. And if the significance is not given, we're going to use our strength table instead. And then depending on the size of your P-value, it will tell you how strong or good your evidence is. So based on that table, we had a small p-value. So let's start with a conclusion with no significance. So it would sound like this. Since the assumptions hold with a small p-value, bracket 0.0027, we have strong evidence that for the population of all Canadian adults, the proportion that like ketchup chips is less than 70%. Now, suppose we had had a 5% significance level. This time it would sound like this. Since the assumptions hold at the 5% significance level, and then I put the p-value in brackets, we can conclude that for the population of all Canadian adults, the proportion that like ketchup chips is less than 70%. So the difference between having significance and not having significance is that significance allows me to either conclude or not conclude. Where no significance, I can only talk about how strong my evidence is. So if we've concluded at this 5% significance level, suppose it turned out we were wrong and should not have concluded HA. What type of error would we have made? Well, when you're dealing with significance, you have two possible errors that you can make. Type 1 is if we rejected HO and concluded HA, but it turned out we were wrong. And type 2 is if we failed to reject HO and did not conclude HA, but it turned out we were wrong. So in our case, we did conclude HA. So the only type of error we could have made is a type 1 error. Now, we're not saying we made that error. We're just saying that if an error was made, that's the type that we would have made. The last thing that I want to look at today is this question here, because this is a common sort of connection between significance and confidence intervals that students don't always recognize. So if we calculated a 95% confidence interval, would we find 0.70 inside the interval? So the important thing to remember is that a 5% significance conclusion must agree with a 95% confidence interval. The same would be true of a 1% significance with a 99% confidence interval, or a 10% significance and a 90% confidence interval. The two values are going to add together to give you 100. So in this case, we concluded that it was less than 70%. So since we concluded at 5% significance level that the proportion of Canadian adults that like ketchup chips is less than 70%, we would not find 0.70 inside the confidence interval. In fact, we know that the interval must lie entirely below 0.70 because we concluded that it was less than 0.70. Hopefully that helped make hypothesis testing make a little bit more sense. Students always struggle with hypothesis testing, not because the math is difficult or necessarily the concepts are difficult, but because the wording is very specific in the answers, and they're frustrated because they always lose points and they're not quite sure why. And it's because your answers have to have exactly what I gave in my answer. So it's best to use the same form for your answers every time and just fill your context in for each particular example. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit like. And if you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe. And in the next video, we're going to continue looking at hypothesis testing, but next time we're going to look at how it works with two proportions. See you in the next video.